Hello, everyone, and welcome back to New Game of Flame. This is the episode number 1. So I'm your host, Andy.
And greetings from Finland by Diego.
And here we are on the first episode where we're actually going to talk about a game which is Misplaced. It's time to get on to the main topic now.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you want to introduce it.
sure. Thanks. So we're going to review today Misplaced, a game for Sega Genesis or Megadrive as it was known differently in different continents. That's a game released 3 years ago, if I remember right, and presented as a meditative puzzler by the authors. And I could say that this is a very nice blend of puzzle and action game. So sometimes you have to think quite a bit to understand how to solve some levels. Other times you really only have to act and not necessarily have to think deeply in every single level. But also this kind of tricks you a little bit, because there are levels when you probably want to jump into acting and you forget that there might be some trick or small secret things to figure out first. But the game idea is pretty simple. You are controlling a character that has to pick up some crystals, which they look like sort of red pills or squared pills or pegs or something like that, and bring these crystals to some altars that are basically drawn as squared holes. And once you collected all the crystals and put them in the right altars, then there's a key that appears somewhere, and that's the exit to the next level. It's a very easy game at the start, I would say. The first few levels, there isn't really much to think. You just introduce the basic ideas, the basic controls. For example, that there isn't just one crystal to find in every level, there is more. Then they start to be hidden, for instance. You can talk with the other characters, so there are other people on the screen. And ask for hints, essentially, but that's in a very straightforward way.
Can I add a quick... I don't know if you mentioned this. I think I'd like to spend a second talking about the authors. So this is created by Retrosouls, which is a Russian group of people who make the game. You can find them at retrosouls.net. And they do stuff on Steam as well. And this particular game is published by Mad Cat Studios, I think. So you can buy actually the cartridge, the physical cartridge of this from Mad Cat Studios, which I think is around £50, I think, if I recall correctly. I'll double check that later. And one last thing, they have a range of different games as well they've made that seem to be really good, so we will probably be covering more of these games in our podcast later on.
Absolutely. Yes, they also don't only produce games for the Sega, but also others, such as the MSX, for example. So I'm pretty sure we have occasions to review other games by the same developers. And I think, well, anyway, in addition to the cartridge version, you can also simply download from itch.io the pay what you want version. So it's easy to try the game out if you want, and or if you don't have an original Sega console to play with on the cartridge, of course. But yeah, so essentially it's a puzzler game, but with a not so easy action part. At least there are some levels that require some challenging levels that require some skills. with the controller to actually really do what you want to do. It's not always easy.
Hang on, sorry, I need to interrupt you. I was wrong. It's not Mad Cat Studios. For some reason, it's Mega Cat Studios. I just reminded myself. Sorry.
Okay, so I think that the first thing you probably notice when you play this game is the tone, that it's almost humoristic, or anyway very friendly looking, almost a bit childish game. The graphic is it's kind of blunt, isn't it? The artwork is kind of blunt, but it has this level of fantasy, I might say. The fact that everything happens on these floating pieces of soil, grassy soil flying in the sky. There seems to be windmills around these floating islands that keep them afloat, and everything looks like very friendly. The characters, the way they are designed, the artwork, it's pretty simple. It doesn't seem to have pursued any technical extremes. Well, in fact, I would say that it might look a bit simple compared to the typical Genesis games. There is no scrolling, for example, of the screens. The screens are static, but clearly a lot of attention has been spent on the artwork itself. It's kind of blocky the way it looks, large pixels, but definitely done on purpose, and the characters are have their own special appearance. This lot of like a potato shape characters with a giant face that basically the same as the body, and these super tiny legs and arms. I think the animations is something I really liked personally.
Yeah, I think the same. Like, if I had to spend a word on the art, I would say it's very cutesy art style, and there's these floating, I call them floating islands, like, but they're relatively small. They have like very cutesy windmills around them and very distinctive trees, which I've taken from to make the graphics for this episode as well, because they're quite funny. They're like cylindrical trees, and it's very colourful, so the palette they use is very bright and happy-ish. And yes, and let's say most of the I think most of the characters also have a looping animation, so they always, I don't know if you're familiar, but when actually they're still, they don't really sit still. They move a little bit with their arms continuously, and there's all these sort of little details going on. And then I think there's a bit of a contrast as well, because they use so the islands is pretty blocky, but then the tree and then there's all the clouds, because it's sitting in the air, this island. The clouds are very blocky. They're made of like, I don't know, rectangular pixels, and they just they look clouds, and it's just very, very interesting choice artistically. I think it's quite unique, and it makes it feel a little bit modern as well, because I don't think back in the days they did this art. I might be wrong, but
no, I agree. I think that they were more traditional in the kind of artwork, and nowadays they got more creative with that, and not really interested very much in pushing the limits of the machine. It's more like about being distinctive.
Yeah.
And in fact, I couldn't name a game that would look like this. It has its own style. But I'm always very, very interested in how they come up with a new look for a game like that. And you can definitely see that they really cared for the details. There's lots of small things, like the way the top hat of the main character bounces away from the head as you walk. You can see it getting detached from the head, or that pirate character has its little bean hat and eye patch. Very simple in a way, but distinctive, so you can immediately catch the character concept that is a pirate, obviously, even if the sprite is small and not particularly high resolution, so to speak.
Also, there is another another little thing that I've noticed is that every now and again a flock of birds flies across the screen, which is quite interesting. That would, that's just an added detail. It was by no means necessary, and it doesn't pertain in any way to the puzzle, but it happens.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate both the artwork and also the care that's being put into the music itself, the soundtrack. I think it's really nice. I think that there's 3 songs in the game. First one for the levels 1 to 10, then there's another for the next 10 levels, and then there's another for the rest. But it's very, very well done. Of course, it matches in atmosphere with the funny fantasy theme of the game. I think my favorite is the first one, actually, that has this kind of mid-tempo shuffle feel or semi-shuffle feel. It reminded me of those old Laurel and Hardy mute comedies, in a sense. So it really set the atmosphere in a very lovely way, so to speak. And it's technically not that simple. If I heard right, there's kind of four voices, 4 instruments making up the music. Some main keyboard-like voice, then there's the bass, drums, and some bells or xylophone sounds in the background, something like that. So it must be at least 4 different voices. So the composition is not really trivial, in my opinion. And has these tiny little effects like the bouncing bass or these melody anticipations and glissandos, small sound effects, but it's really cool. And I don't know if there was a separate musician who composed this, or if it's done by the same programmers, but it's really, really well done, in my opinion. All the 3 songs of the game are very well done, but the first one is, in my opinion, the one that stands out most.
I think so too. What I would add is that we did try to find out a bit more details in regards to this game, but we didn't get any feedback, so we don't really know who did the music, if it's separate people or not. But it is quite beautiful. Like when you actually look at the whole, the title is very colourful as well. So it's very striking visuals, I'd say, for me. And the music, yes, it's not distinctive, so I can't really think about the music. I've played it like yourself, I think nearly to the end, but I haven't finished it like you. But I can't remember any of the music. They're part of the background kind of thing. They don't annoy me, even if they're very low volume as well. So that's been calculated quite well as well. So they're not too intrusive, but I can't really remember any of them. I don't know if you can.
Yes, but I'm not gonna sing them.
No. Well,
yeah, I remember especially the first one because that's my favorite, and I remember the last one because it's the last one I heard.
I was just wondering now. So in the music they use obviously the Yamaha chip from the Megadrive, and do we know if this is on other platforms as well? I don't remember.
This game? I don't think so. No. That's a good question. I haven't noticed. I'm not completely sure, but I didn't notice any other version of this game.
Okay, so maybe that is the soundtrack. So the Yamaha chip has a very distinctive sound to it, so you can imagine what kind of funky sounds it can make. And I think, yes, the music is spot on with the theme of the game, and it changes every so many levels. I noticed that as well. I think there was a moment where actually I don't remember because I had to. So there's one thing to say about this game. There are no save states. I need to say this now because what happened to me, I had to leave it on in order to progress, and I came back to it and there was no more music. So I'm not sure if the music plays on a cycle of a set number of times because they think, oh well, you've done it by then. But I didn't. I think I left it overnight as well, which is not great. But I had to do that in order to not have to start from the beginning again.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you said maybe reach the end of it.
Of the
and
loops.
did a restart. Okay.
That was quite an interesting one. So, how did you play this? Did you play it all in one go, or did you actually wait through the levels? Did you? So not being in any save state. As I said, I left it on during the night and then I continued the next day.
I played it all the way through, start to finish, and it wasn't long.
How long did it take you?
Less than an hour the first time, and maybe half that the second time. I played it through twice without save states. Yes, it's not that difficult. I would say that there's a couple of levels that are tricky because, as I said, it's not just thinking. There are levels where you actually have enemies, these ghosts that are moving a little bit randomly. It would be nice to know how the programmer decided the movements of these ghosts. They look random. They don't look like they have a. Definitely, they don't have a pattern. They don't chase you directly, but they are a little bit unpredictable. But as you know, random is not really random in software, so there are ways to simulate that, of course, using the clock and everything like that. So it would be nice to know if it really is as much as that or something else. But I haven't figured out any pattern in the way they move, so this makes it some level a little bit difficult, and you have to repeat them over and over.
I want to add something to this because I've noticed this. So there are some levels where you have to go into certain spots of the island. So you're running around the island. Sometimes there's some hurdles, something in the way, and you have to go around it. And then there are these little enemies that are running around randomly, seemingly randomly, and you have to, collect this, find a way to reach the gems, and then you have to place these gems on these little white squares, as Diego said before, which are the altars, and they're called altars, but they're white boxes with a with a black center, and you deposit them by pressing one of the buttons. But while I was doing that, while I was actually trying to go to one of the locations and fetch one of the diamonds, one of the gems, I noticed that the more I lingered in that area, the more the enemies would kind of slowly group around that area. And then I'd change and I'd move over. And that because it took me a long time. So we need to start introducing as well one of the main mechanics of this game, if you want to do that.
Yeah, I don't think that would be much of a spoiler because I think that revealed in level 5 probably. But so everyone will get there very quickly anyway. But it was still surprising to see it when it first happened.
So what happens?
Well, it happens that at some point the other character revealed that you can activate some recording mechanism and essentially walk for a short distance, over a short distance, while recording, and then this path you have done while recording is can be triggered again later on. So there's a sort of record and replay mechanic. Well, as a matter of fact, the first time you just record and don't really move. Everything freezes when you activate this, so you can think carefully. There's no risk doing that. Actually, it can be even used as opposed to take a breath in the game. Just activate the recording and not doing anything if you think you want to have a little break from the ghosts chasing you. And later on, you can replay that path as many times as you want. And this allows you to also walk over gaps between these islands and reach places that would seem unreachable by more normally moving over there.
I think, hang on 1 second. I think we need to say that, usually you go around this floating island, and fetch these gems, but at a certain point, these gems are found outside the islands on little floating platforms. So this is how I think the concept is introduced, isn't it?
Yeah, so to clarify that, the way this works. So first you press that record button and you can walk through a path. It must be an unobstructed path, so you have to be on a clear enough area so that you can move your character through that path. But then after you finish recording, you stop recording, you haven't moved there, you're still in the original place. It's like it happened in your dream or in another dimension. But then as you move your character somewhere else on the map, you still see these little dots indicating the path you've recorded, and then you can replay your recording. That's when you really move through this path you have drawn previously. But as you now replay it, this happens in a sort of alternate dimension, so obstacles don't matter, gaps between islands don't matter, so you can reach unreachable places, and you have to think very often in almost every level how to use this properly. So both where to record, what to record, and then where to use it for your purpose. And then you can do it as many times as you want, so you can re-record if you find out that it's not working for this level. So this is really perhaps the part that you have to think most in the game, the most puzzle part of the game. And it might take a few minutes to get used to it, because it's not the most obvious thing, but that's what makes it intriguing in my opinion. And it's kind of the whole selling point of the game for me. It's a very original idea.
I agree. And also, there's another thing to say about this is, so you might create a pattern, a path that works in one way, but then you've got a gem on the other side and you have to reach that, and that's in a different place. And if you maybe think you can use the same path, and you end up maybe on a little island of one by one, and then you can't get out anymore. So in that case, it's not that you're stuck and you have to start all from the beginning. You can press start, and by pressing start you can restart just that level.
Yes, you can definitely get stuck somewhere, but the game knows about it, so you can restart the level as many times as you want. There is actually no lives limit, so it's not a game that's supposed to frustrate you but sending you back to the first level. It never does that unless you turn it off. But you can certainly get stuck, and that's also one way that at some levels, and here I don't want to really spoil too much because you have to play through to get to that point and figure it out by yourself, otherwise it won't be just as rewarding. There will be levels where you'll figure out some ways how to reach in some places, or how to get the crystal, or how to put them down in ways you haven't thought before. That the game gives you some hints every now and then. Whenever you talk to the other character, you can talk once to each, and there's a predefined script. There's nothing interactive really for the player, but they give you hint about how things works, but not too much. Some things you just have to figure out by yourself, and it can happen that on some level you might think, well, this is just impossible, but I can tell you that that's not the case. Every level can be definitely completed. I don't really want to say more than this because it would spoil your fun you have to figure out by yourself.
I think I would like to add another bit, which is not really spoilery because it is part of one of the descriptions of. So there is a certain point where you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to record this path and then play it further on, and I reach that little island. But then you can't, because even with the path, it doesn't reach. It's not long enough. So you have to also be aware that when you're in the alternate dimension, and this is one of the NPCs that tells you quite early in the game, you can see more than you can see during the normal course of time. And so you can actually see there are some hidden platforms which you can stand on afterwards during the real-time game, let's say, and you can reach the island with those kind of mechanics.
Yeah, that's okay. That's not too much of a spoiler. I was afraid you were gonna say something else, but thankfully you didn't do it.
So what did you think about level design?
Yes, I think that's another major plus for me, because almost every level has something new or twisted in a way that you see the level and you think, okay, I know this, I can do this, this is simple. And then it tricks you into doing something you've done before. And that's when you realize that's not the same as before. It's not gonna work this time. And you have to take another step forward in your way of thinking to circumvent a new problem. So I think that was almost every level has something like this. There is maybe one or two levels where really it's mostly a matter of moving around fast and avoiding the ghosts and nothing else. But mostly I think every level is really nice, and none of them is a waster, so to speak.
Yes, it depends. Like, so there are for me some bits that I've written down, like to note is. So you get used to some form of pattern, and you say, okay, now I've got to do this, and then all of a sudden that pattern, in that particular level, maybe only, then doesn't work anymore, and you're like, oh well, hang on a minute, I've done this up to now. Why is this completely different? And you're a bit thrown off for that. At least I was, to be honest. Other ones seem a bit a bit strange. So again, not to spoil too much, but there's one level where the gems are hidden and you have to just go around and find them, and there's stuff blocking the visuals, which I found a bit like, oh, this is a bit of a trial and error until I actually find them, which wasn't a really puzzle kind of thing. It was mainly, again, trial and error. I don't know. So let's say most of it works really well, and then they have these 2 or 3 random levels in there where they're just different. So you have to just abandon the usual. And sometimes they also take you off course. Like you think, oh, what's this one gonna? Why is this one like this? So you go to a character and the character says something, and you think, oh, that's a hint for me, and then it has nothing to do with what you have to solve, and you're like, oh. And when you get to know that, it's a bit like, oh, they tried to throw me off here.
But you're thinking about the first level. I think it was level 18 or something like that. There's a level that for me was the hardest the first time.
Well, I'm talking about the one with all the grid.
With all the grid.
And the character just gives you a hint.
Okay. Lots of altars, not lots of trees. Yeah.
That threw me off a bit because it was just a bit of random trial and error. It wasn't really thinking about how to do it.
Okay. I also thought that the hint is a bit obscure in that case. It gives you a code, and you have to understand what kind of code, what is the meaning of the code, how the code is made, and then it would translate into the position of the altars you have to use.
Oh well, I didn't figure that one out at all.
And if you don't get the mechanic behind this number, behind this code, you can of course just try all the altars one by one, drop the crystal. If it stays there, it's correct. If it doesn't stay and you can pick it up again, then it's a wrong one, it's a fake altar, and you can keep going. So you can still solve it in a blunt way, but eventually I understood what was the code. But the first time I also did it that way. Didn't get it immediately, I thought I got it. It didn't work, so I just went through trial and error. And maybe the reason it's because you do have ghosts in that level, so this doesn't give you the time to think about how to break the code. You can put the whole game on pause, of course, but I got this sense of rush that I had to run from the ghost. I can't stop there and think about how to break the code. But then the second time I understood what it was really, and not the simplest, but maybe that's for good. But I thought that was another level that really gave me a hard time. But there's the last level, of course. That requires many attempts because it is very sensitive to movement mistakes. If you move one step too much, it can ruin your solution. So last level, it is a bit frustrating, even once you know how to do it. But the level that gave me the most time, I think it's level 18, where you have a whole forest of trees, and the crystals are hidden behind the trees.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about before, yeah.
Yeah. So, and you have something like 4 ghosts or something like that chasing you around, so you have to watch out for the ghosts, don't get caught, otherwise you have to restart everything, and you have to guess where are the crystals. But still, even that level has this nice gotcha moment, because first you might think you've tried all the places where they might be hidden, but then you realize that, oh, I really didn't. At least the first time it caught me, and I thought, no, that's impossible. But of course it is possible. Let's not spoil too much.
No. So yeah, overall, so I want to say that I'm not a puzzle game. I'm not a puzzle gamer. So, and I think what I did enjoy this, but I kept on going for going's sake. You know, I did like the graphics, I did like the audio, sound, soundtrack, but I'm more of a sucker for a story. And here there was, for me, no story, or no backstory of why who are these little characters, why are they in the clouds, like on these platforms, what exactly are these gems, why do I have to go and fetch them, what are the altars. There's no explanation, at least so you can get this on itch.io. I think it's name your own price, which we did, and there's no manual. So there's no backstory to it. There's no context, and I really like that stuff because it gives me, and also it gives me a sense of why I'm doing this. And there's no sense of progression so it's not like there's solve a puzzle. Let's put it more like in a Mario game, which makes no sense, but you do a level and then you can progress further on the route to free the princess, and you can go forward and forward and forward. Here there's no real purpose except just finishing the puzzle, which it's okay if you like puzzle games. I think you'll have a really good time. But if you're more story driven like myself, probably it'll make you think, and it will probably lower that level of replayability, I think, as well, because once you already know as well the levels, it's difficult to go back to them because you kind of know them. And this happened to me because I turned it off once by mistake, and in order to get back where I was, it was really quick because I already remembered them all. They're not procedurally generated; they're all the same, and so the replayability value here is, I think, not so high. Also, just a pointer out that there's no multiplayer in this as well, so you can't play against a friend or anything. It's just a single player.
Yeah, I also think that replayability is not the greatest feature of this game. I did enjoy playing it twice, at least. I can see myself playing it another time, more for the mood at that point. But, well, unlike you, I think I consider myself a puzzle lover. I like puzzle games. So for me, the backstory was not that important. But on the other hand, it looks to me like the game tries to have a backstory, but it doesn't resolve it. It doesn't develop it. Because the characters talk to you. Well, the whole game starts with a message that I think it says it's your own character saying that, oh look, I've been here before, I'm here every day, or something like that. And the character you talk with, it sounds like they're taking you somewhere with their story. But at the end of it, you haven't really got any answer to where are you, what is really this world. There's a point where the screen turns a little darker in colors after the first 10 levels. There's some text that says it's getting dark. The music changes to the second type of music.
Oh yeah, I
and
remember this.
The difficulty maybe gets a little higher, and so on. And then again, when you finish the next 20 level or so, some characters tell you something like he's coming, and then next level he says he's already here, but you're never really told what is he talking about. What is this other entity or character who is already there? That there are some consequences that, once again, I'll try not to spoil them for you. There are some consequences of what happens after that level 20 that looks like, oh my god, no, now this is really going to be more difficult. But the story, it's underdeveloped, and I think the main gripe I have with this whole game is that it's too short. Because I finished it in less than an hour the first time. I don't know, maybe it was 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. Despite getting stuck, also because of wrong choice of controller at some point, getting stuck on some levels that required a little bit of timing and skills. And it wasn't too difficult to resolve the puzzle part. It was rewarding anyway, because, as I hate, almost every level has a gotcha moment for you, where you think you know how you're gonna do a level, and then no, there's a twist, you have to do it in another way. But it's really only 25 levels. It's too short. It left me disappointed that, oh no, I was having fun. Where's the rest of the game? I would have expected 100 levels. The game itself doesn't even seem to be very big. I think the file itself is less than a megabyte, 800 something. I think I've seen Genesis games of several megabytes, so I don't think that would be a problem that they run out of space in the cartridge. I'm not sure. I think that cartridges are like 4 megabytes for megabyte.
Yes, they can be bigger or smaller.
So you could definitely have, well, at least let's say twice as many levels, but I would have hoped for 100. Obviously, it looks like they put care into the level design. As I said, in my opinion, almost every level has something new, and that could be a problem, figuring out 100 levels with something new, each one of them. It's not necessarily easy, but still it was too short for me. It looked a bit like maybe they had planned for something bigger, but at some point they decided to let it go and did not reveal everything about the story. And that's, in my opinion, the only negative side of this game, really, that it leaves you longing for more, and unfortunately it's pretty small.
Okay, so in a nutshell, would you recommend this game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course I would. As you said, if you're not a puzzle game lover, then probably this might even frustrate you perhaps, or might leave you unsatisfied. And also I should say that if you compare this with typical Genesis games, this is maybe not top-notch from a technical point of view. Like, there are games that have better graphics, this doesn't even have scrolling, and games that have more depth. Usually when I think of the Sega Megadrive or Genesis, I immediately think of very fast-paced platform games, of obviously the Sonic the Hedgehog series, but there's lots of games like that. For example, the Earthworm Jim games or the Echo the Dolphin games, very fast. And I like, for example, playing the Cool Spot game. I don't think it's generally considered a very great game for the Genesis, but I like that too. So compared to those typical Genesis games, this looks definitely simpler. Simpler in gameplay and simpler in the technical aspects. And at some point, I would even dare to say that this could have been a game for mobile devices if it wasn't for the fact that probably the screen would be too small. But in terms of depth and technicalities, it's simple. So if you like typical Genesis games, this might be a bit underwhelming from those point of view. But as a puzzler, it's great. It's great and has a wonderful atmosphere that it feels perfect for me to play for a little bit after a week of work or a very tiring day. You just want to relax or something and play this game. I totally recommend it.
My opinion is more or less the same, and I think for whoever is a puzzle lover and wants to experience something new, this game is perfect. It's wonderful, wonderfully drawn, the music is great, but you have to be a puzzle lover in order to appreciate it.
Yeah, and you have to expect that perhaps when you reach the end it might be a little bit underwhelming.
Yes. Okay.
As if I may add this last bit, also do not expect a great looking ending. So it really does feel like it's been cut short at some point.
Great. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up for us in this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it and it will help you or serve you to make an informative choice. For me personally, it's not worth £50, unfortunately. Even in terms of gameplay, time and replayability, but name your price is very, very fair. So I'd recommend that route if possible. And now I think it's time to close, and just remind you guys that we can find us on the web at www.newgameoldflame.com, and you can drop us a line there, or you can join the Discord server and you can find the link to that on the website, and drop us an email anytime at game@newgameoldflame.com. Let us know if there are any games that you'd like us to try. And for now, I think I'll say goodbye and talk to you next time.
All right. See you next time. Bye.